Ms. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for hosting a hearing on Chinese Communist Party's economic aggression. The CCP is determined to dominate critical supply chains through massive industrial subsidies, forced technology transfers, and intellectual property theft. United States trade and economic policies must align with our strategic goals to strengthen supply chains and reduce dependence on the CCP while advancing standards and rules that serve our interest. One important area in this regard is American leadership on digital trade. Ambassador Lighthizer, the CCP playbook on digital trade centers around censorship, forced data localization, and control of cross-border data flows. It seeks to export these practices to other countries around the world because control of digital economy serves its malign influence. At USTR, you negotiated the first ever digital trade chapter in the United States, Canada, Mexico agreement, as well as US-Japan digital trade agreement. Both agreements set a high standard for digital trade based on American standards. Presently, there seems to be a lack of US leadership on digital trade. Do you agree? How can the United States push back on the CCP playbook for digital trade in the Indo-Pacific region, especially as it relates to localization and data flows? Will American leadership in digital trade help our American small businesses expand into new markets?
Well, thank you for the comment and for the question. I think what we did in USMCA and in the Japan agreement were very important, and I think these technology issues are particularly significant. My own sense is that with respect to countries like China, you're never going to get any kind of an agreement on banning data localization, right? It's just to me at least a lost cause. And I think the same thing is probably true in Europe. I think Europe is always going to demand data localization. I think continuing those kind of negotiations where it makes sense, we should do it. But as a general matter, the overall principle of banning requirements for data localization is one that we're just fundamentally not going to win, because it's in the hands of those countries, right, in the final. So we have a valid principle, and we certainly did it with respect to Canada and Mexico, and we did it with respect to Japan. I would suggest maybe that those three countries are different than some of the other countries we're dealing with. But I do think there's a lot that can be done in the area of digital trade. I think Congress has to be careful to make sure that it maintains its ability to regulate technology in the future, that we don't do something in these agreements that would prevent you from doing something that you thought necessary down the road. And I think there is some work being done on digital trade.
Thank you. And second question is Dr. Schmidt. Could you speak a little more to the CCP playbook on digital trade and how they craft rules and standards to export their model of the state-controlled digital economy, and how important it is for the United States to be writing the digital rules of the road when the CCP is trying to pass us by and dominate 21st century technologies like artificial intelligence?
I think what happened with Huawei is instructive. So China has a subsidy program for purchasing things from China. For example, we'll pick an African country. And the Huawei products are cheaper than the other global competitors anyway. So you have an African country that is not particularly wealthy, and they ultimately make the Huawei choice for good economic reasons. As part of Huawei, they get a whole set of firewalls and censorship capabilities and services above it, which are not representative of Western or American values. Some of the countries use it, some of them don't. But more importantly, it also serves as a signal intelligence network for the Chinese. The Chinese government is very obsessed with Chinese nationals who are in foreign countries. So there's lots of evidence of surveillance through these techniques and lots of aspects of SIGINT in general. So there's a good example where the fact that there was not a globally competitive and relatively inexpensive and well-financed choice caused countries that they didn't want to buy it, they didn't buy all that other stuff, but they got it as part of the package. That's the threat. So you can imagine, going back to what the ambassador said about how trade works, imagine that as more and more of this stuff from China gets embedded in all these other countries, it comes with all of these additions. And these additions are things that we would never allow.
Thank you. My time is up. I yield back.